Hello and welcome to Fed Snacks, a show where we bring you quick bites of insights from former federal tech leaders. Today we're talking with Joe Scheidler, former Associate Director and Special Advisor in the White House, Policy and Strategy Advisor at the State Department. He's now the co-founder and CEO of Helios. Welcome to the program, Joe. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sylvia. It's great to be with you.
Awesome. Well, I want to just jump right in. I think these past two experiences that you've had, both in the White House and State Department, are going to really set the scene for what we talk about and what you're doing now. So why don't you clue us in a little bit about your background and what you were doing in the federal government?
I ultimately found my way to Washington, starting off at the U.S. Agency for International Development when it was still around, and was really focused on a number of items. But the one that stood out to me, I think, early on was the importance of strong public-private partnerships, especially in the context of international development. American enterprise plays such a significant role in lifting the tide of all boats across the world. And the U.S. government can have a really imperative role to play in supporting that effort. And that became clearer to me as I went on to the White House, where I spent almost 2 years, a year and a half of which was with the Office of the National Cyber Director. It's kind of a brand new component that Congress had authorized within the EOP. And then finally, I wrapped up my time, as you mentioned, with the U.S. Department of State in the Office of the Secretary. Was fortunate to lead legislative affairs on a G7 initiative that we were coordinating across the interagency from the State Department. But my job was, primarily to kind of work with Congress because a big part of that initiative was mobilizing public and private finance. So after I left the State Department, co-founded Helios, and we've been off to the races ever since.
And I think your case is very unique, going from the federal government right into that startup mode. I think a lot of federals admire that startup mindset. So I'd love if you would talk just a little bit about what that transition for you looked like.
As I transitioned into the private sector, it all kind of just starts with identifying a problem. I mean, I saw so many sort of inefficiencies in my time in government, and part of that is just because you have a tendency and an obligation to be a perfectionist. There is no room for error when you're dealing with decisions that can directly impact livelihoods, billions of dollars with the stroke of a pen on a random decision that might be taking place on a Tuesday afternoon. And that was also, why I think I saw an opportunity using all of these legacy research tools to start something that would really carry the capacity to build trust around generative AI systems being used in these highly sensitive and highly consequential environments. It's all about iterating quickly, failing fast, and learning from it, and then implementing a long and enduring solution from that. In government, you don't really have the same liberty to fail fast. And I think that's where the private sector can really come in and fill a gap. And that's ultimately what is leading us to sort of the right product that is quickly becoming known as the tool of choice for public policy professionals. Proxy is exactly the tool I needed when I was at the State Department or any point in my life in government. And what's different about us is we have built a system with AI nativism front of mind. And that, I think, is what's going to enable users to have a more intuitive first impression of the tool, something that they understand, that was built with domain experience in mind, and move them from getting 30 minutes of their week back from an AI pilot that does a halfway decent job of summarizing a bill to getting 15 to 20 hours back of their week.
I think both people who are in the federal government and former feds who are trying to, achieve this mission as well are going to get so much out of what we've already discussed. And this last question, I'm also really excited to hear your response about, and just getting your advice for feds or, some of the former feds who are right now trying to navigate their own transition, either into, starting their own startup or just joining, another fellow former fed trying to still continue their work in the government from the private industry side.
For me, like it's just all about finding your mission and like actually identifying real problems in the world. It's important for people to realize that service comes in many forms and it doesn't just have to be within government. There are ways for you to answer the call of what you can do for your country without putting a suit and tie on and walking into Capitol Hill. One thing you should mentally prepare to adjust to is just the level of autonomy and again, as I said earlier, the reality that you have to accept is fail fast, iterate quickly, and move toward sort of a closer state of perfection over time. But above all, what's I think going to make a more harmonious public-private interaction in the grand scheme of things is just giving people the right tools to move faster, to move with more clarity, to move with more trust. And I am just so excited to be building at that frontier, kind of building the operating infrastructure for public-private interaction. But lots more to come, and excited to see what people will build in any case as they transition in or out of government.
I'm so excited to see what happens next with Helios. Joe, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation, and I know our listeners found everything that we talked about today insightful and useful. So thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure, Sylvia. Hope to be back soon.